Hey guys, how are you today? I'm doing well. So this is the first episode of Let Me Tell You About Homestuck, and what this episode is going to be doing and what future episodes are going to be doing is from as of last Friday to this Friday, and on every Friday I'm going to be updating you on what has happened this week in Homestuck, the updates on the comic, and my take on it, I suppose, and just a few thoughts that I hear from fans whenever I'm skimming. So basically what this is going to be is pretty much full of spoilers. So if you read the comic on your own, if you haven't read up to what happened 7 a.m. on this Friday, then don't watch this. If you don't want anything spoiled for you, don't watch this. This is focused on bringing you the updates and bringing you certain thoughts and feelings from the updates. If you watch this and you are like, hey, something's missing from this, or hey, I think you misinterpreted this, or I think you missed something, then leave me a comment. I would love to have viewer feedback and make this a better show for the Homestuck viewers who are watching this. So, we'll start with what happened on Friday the 13th, and move on to what happened this Friday at 7 a.m. Now, any updates after 7 a.m. I have not documented. They will be put on next week's show. Disclaimer, disclaimer. Alright, to start off, Jake has already been using his hope powers thanks to Arania, and he's basically making like this huge force field thing. And as he's going, he's, screaming random, like, old man things like, tally ho! And stuff. And Jade feels that she needs to stop this, so she's making her own type of force field with her space powers. But, unfortunately, Jake is just too powerful and he's overpowering her. She's getting pushed backward and her force field is... I wouldn't say that it's dropping. It might be dropping, but his is just getting overwhelmingly huge. She's finally thrown backwards, and as she's thrown backwards, she screams that she is the most powerful doggy girl in Paradox Space, which I thought was actually really cute. At this point, she's still grimdark, of course. So, eventually, like I said, she's knocked backwards, and she skims across the water lava stuff, and then slides on the ground, and she's knocked out. Now, when you look at her body when she's knocked out, she is completely pale. The Grimdark is gone. So you would assume that she's knocked out of Grimdark, so she'll be okay. Well, the next scene is Roxy still in hiding, watching everything in plain sight, and Jane is still under the mind control of the computer on her head. And she's very, very unhappy. She yells at Jake about harming their daughter, and at this point, Arania is plotting to do something, and she apologizes to Jane, but she says it must be done because she feels that when Jade awakens, she's going to awaken Grimdark again. So you watch as Arania uses her powers to break the tower that Jane was making into pieces, and the pieces topple downward, and they crush Jade. Now, I had this part ruined for me. Like, I hadn't read the updates yet, and I was heartbroken because Jade is the first character I've ever cosplayed. She was my very, very favorite character, so I took this really hard. I actually spent some time crying, but thanks to the fans and their beautiful, beautiful thoughts and theories, I'm pretty convinced that Jade is going to be just fine. So, they actually, as you've seen throughout Homestuck, Hussie likes to make many references. He's made Peter Pan references. Now he's getting onto the Wizard of Oz stuff. And you see just her legs sticking out and her shoes, and of course, that's a Wizard of Oz reference to when the witch had the house dropped on her. And honestly, like, whenever I first saw her ruby slippers and realized she was a witch, I was like, I wonder if he did that on purpose. Well, now my question is totes answered. He did. Moving on. The next scene shows the clock for the god tier for Jade swinging between just and heroic, and it's about to stop in the middle so that she can revive, but Arania uses her powers to move it to just, and that means that Jade won't be able to revive, at least in that way. So yeah. By the way, another disclaimer, if I am saying names wrong, or you feel like I'm saying names wrong, tell me what your version of the name is. Spell it out for me. Sound it out, because I say things in a very different way and people are looking at me like, that's not how I say it. So, if you don't think I'm saying something right, correct me. Moving on. Dave has been contacted and he's about to leave to help the others, and he's saying his goodbyes to the mayor, and he actually kisses the mayor on the forehead and tells him he loves him. So now there's a bunch of fans going, OTP, OTP, which I think is really cute. So, anyways, he contacts Rose and lets her know that shit is going down on Jade's planet and suggests that they meet up there. The scene switches back to Arania and Jane. Jane is extremely angry and tells Arania off and quickly goes to help Jade. After Jane leaves, Arania acknowledges Roxy and knows that she was there all along. Jane is mumbling things about Arania as she attempts to use her powers, but just as she's about to use her powers, Gamzee jumps from nowhere and starts tackling her and wrestling with her. The scene switches back to Roxy, who has just become, like, uninvisible, and she starts yelling at Arania, basically spitting hate at her and, inquiring as to who she is and spitting hate at her and showing very Black Quadrant feelings in a way to get the ring, because she, of course, wants the ring for Calliope to revive Calliope. Arania, of course, is not going to allow this, and while this is happening, the brain ghost Dirk that Jake made up is sneaking up behind Arania. So eventually Arania realizes that Roxy's just going to be a pain about this and she can't have her stealing the ring, so she puts her to sleep. Now, here comes my favorite scene in these updates. Calliope, this scene switches to Calliope, who is in her like little white road circle, and she's all curled up and she's just really sad and lonely. She's going on about how she's feeling useless and how she wishes she hadn't kicked out Roxy and her sunny mum so that she'd have some friends around. And in the middle of this, she notices that like a stage with a curtain appears, and she thinks this isn't part of my dream, and she starts to hear footsteps. So she panics and tries to run behind the curtain, thus making another reference when she yells, "Pay no attention to that girl behind the curtain, I am a powerful magician," and all those things. And when the footsteps start to appear, the white swirly pieces that are around her actually turn yellow to make like a yellow brick road. So great. So, you're sitting there wondering, oh my gosh, is there something scary coming to get her? Is it Roxy, since Roxy's asleep? No, it's not. It's totally Jade. She says hello and assures Calliope that she's a friend and that Callie can come out. And when Callie peeks through the curtain, she's in her troll Sona makeup and she recognizes Jade. And I know for me and for a lot of fans, it's like, the two space players that were super sweet and awesome get to meet and hang out. And I'm sure, I have 100% confidence that they will come up with a great plan to help things get moving. I know they will. So, here's to hoping. And another thing, the first thing that you notice when you look at Jade is she has pupils. And we know that the dead don't have pupils. So, several theories to this is she came in here either not realizing she was dead, because John has done this before. He didn't realize he was dead, and then whenever he realized he was dead, he changed. Another theory is that she appears originally when she's knocked out before she dies. But, we don't get to see anymore. There's no more. So, okay. Moving on. Excuse me, I'm burping. The scene switches back to Gamzee and Jane, fighting, and Jane's angry, yelling about him groping her, just overall being angry. Dave arrives on the scene and is very confused. He views Jake getting like this huge hope power and being out of control, and then he finds Jade and really is very, very upset. He asks Gamzee and Jane about what's going on as they're wrestling and calls Gamzee awful. The scene switches back to Brain Ghost Dirk sneaking up on Arania. He becomes completely real and startles her. She couldn't even sense him, that he was around. She doesn't understand how he exists, and is questioning that, and Dirk explains that Jake's hope powers basically made him real instead of fake. And Arania, of course, thinks this is nonsense, but she still can't understand why he exists. Now, the next thing that Dirk says is awesome because it's another reference. It's a quote mimicking Princess Bride when he says, "I am Brain Ghost Dirk, and you kissed my boyfriend. Prepare to die." And then they get into a fight. At this same time, of course, Jake spouts another one of his random old man things and totally ruins the badassery, and you're just laughing. So, alright, next scene is Terezi, who has put the blindfold on her by alchemizing Rose's scarf and her glasses, and she's got the blindfold on. She looks badass, and she is able to find Gamzee. She attacks Gamzee, and Jane is just sitting there confused as to why this is happening. She's yelling about how she's going to have justice on Gamzee for what he's done, and insults his religion, and then she stops, and she can smell Arania. Terezi then is able to realize that Arania and Gamzee are somehow probably working together, which I think is pretty smart of her. She's also going on about how she's upset that she ever fell for what Arania said, and she's going to bring them both to justice. Alright, during some of that, I know I'm skipping ahead and skipping around, sorry. Hold on, I'm looking at my notes, I'm very, very sorry for this. Dave also, like, during this entire time, is, of course, super excited to see Gamzee get beat up by Terezi, and of course, all of us pretty much think that Terezi is badass, right? One of the funnier things that happens is he's trying to talk to Jane, and he accidentally calls her John's hot mom, and he's, of course, very embarrassed about that. Jane, of course, as I mentioned, is just kind of staring. And this entire time, Gamzee is just laying on the ground smiling, or just smiling as he's having the crap beat out of him. He's doing nothing, of course, because we all know he's under Arania's mind control. So after, of course, Terezi is smelling Arania, the scene switches back to Arania and Brain Ghost Dirk. He slashes at her and gets, a cut on her. She deflects the next blow. Then, of course, it switches to a scene of where he's rammed the sword completely through her and pulls it back out. And you can see that his sword is badly damaged, but because of the ring, she's quickly healing and takes no damage. Sorry, there was a noise in the other room. So distracted. So, after healing, she decides that she wants to give him a fair shot to get the ring. She's not going to move an inch. She's just going to let him attack her. Give him a fair shot. Then the scene switches back to Terezi. She's stabbing Gamzee repeatedly, and he's still not fighting back. He's just sitting there with a stupid look on his face. And she's getting angrier and angrier that he won't fight back. Then the scene switches to, like, her scalemate with, like, some of Gamzee's blood on it. And she's, of course, talking more about judgment. And as of 7 a.m., that is where it stops. Again, as I said, If there are further updates for today, they will be on next week's show. And I'm sorry for my mumbling and getting stuck places and stuff in this first episode. Give me time to practice and I'll be much better at this, but I do have to read off of notes because there's a lot to cover usually. So, thank you for being patient with me, and I hope that you enjoyed this recap, and hopefully I'll be able to make them shorter in the future and just streamline things, but this was my first episode, so yeah. Okay. I hope you guys have a great day, and thank you for watching, and tune in next week where I'm sure I'll derp up a little more. Have a great day, guys. Bye.